The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This is Robert Jakowski. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. And our topic today is how to enable peak sales performance, how to really accelerate your performance with your sales organization that you have today. So thank you very much for joining us today. I look forward to your questions, look forward to your participation in the polls that we have in today's webinar. And we will be recording today's webinar. So if you want to share this with other colleagues or other members of your management team, I'd very much encourage you to do so. So I love this topic because sometimes the most expensive resource that you have in your company is your sales team or your partner sales team that you have. And so these teams can be very expensive, and the key is always to think about what can I do to enable that performance. So as we get started today, like I said, I'm going to record this, we'll share this, we'll take questions throughout the webinar. We are going to have a Q&A session later in today's webinar, and I would encourage you to ask any and all questions that you have today. Some questions that we should start off with today as we're thinking about sales performance and making sure that your team is going to really knock it out of the park in terms of a home run as they work together in 2021. Let's think about that, and what are some questions? So think about this. What are you doing today to enable your sales success at the company? What are you doing to achieve consistency across your sales team? So in many cases, many executives I talk to have what I call the ABCs, where you've got A performers, B performers, and C. And no matter how good of a job that they do as far as recruitment, they still end up with the ABCs. So that's always a question, is how do you effectively upgrade your talent within the sales organization, and how do you equip them for success? Another question perhaps to ask yourself is, what are you doing today to create a winning sales culture within the organization that you have today? And is sales a solo game, or is it a team game for your company? And I would venture to say it's a team game. I would say that sales is about collectively working with all the support resources that you have today with your sales executives, your account managers, and really making sure that you can achieve the success as a team. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can do that. So for me, I wanted to introduce really 6 what I call transformational steps that you can take from today's webinar and implement them at your company. Each of these steps that we're going to talk about today will significantly improve performance that you have with your sales organization. So just in terms of introduction, myself, Craig and I founded On-Demand Advisors 12 years ago, and we have a very simple mission as a revenue acceleration agency to really work with you as sales executives, as executives of the company, as board members, really to think about how you're going to accelerate the revenue growth for your firm. From my background, I've been a serial CEO at both private and public companies in the Silicon Valley. Craig has been a serial CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, at both public and private companies. And he's done a tremendous amount of branding work before that with some of the large agencies in San Francisco. So we bring a great strategic mindset together as we think about revenue growth, because for most companies that spans marketing, sales, business development, services, and other categories that you have within your company. So it's a continuum. So let's start off with a couple questions. And let me just go ahead and launch these questions and ask for your participation. I'll always share the results with you as we go through our poll today. So here's the first one. What do you think is your biggest sales challenge that you have today? Is it creating enough sales leads for your organization? Is it onboarding and enabling new sales executives to get them up to speed? Is it reducing the length of the sales process or sales cycle that you have today? Is it generating consistent sales performance so that you can have consistency across your A, B's, and C's? Or is it converting interest into qualified sales opportunities? So go ahead, if you could, and weigh in, and I'll keep this open for a few more seconds here so that everybody has time to give your input. but we appreciate it. All input is important. So we love to capture your thoughts and ideas about, again, what's important to you. And that, of course, that input will help change the focus in terms of things that I'm going to share with you today as we go through today's webinar. Okay, so let's go ahead and give another second or two for you to opt in as far as your participation. So appreciate that. And let me go ahead and close the poll and share it with you. Okay, 33% of you stated that creating enough sales leads is your #1 challenge. 8% stated onboarding and enabling new sales executives. Another 8% stated that reducing the length of the sales cycle is your most important issue. 33%, so this is really tied for #1, is getting consistency across your team for sales performance. And 17% of you stated that converting interest into qualified sales opportunities is important and your biggest challenge. So appreciate that very much. Let me go ahead and launch one more poll here. And this is a little bit different. So when you think about your website today, how does your website really help your sales team? So does it do an adequate job as far as presenting your solutions and services? Does it educate prospects about your value propositions? Does it guide the visitors that you have through the various steps of their evaluation? Does it enable the buyer's journey for each visitor? Or do you complete the entire sales cycle on your website? So I'd love to get your impression about your website today, because we're going to talk about some transformational ideas and practices on your website that can help you in terms of making it much more substantial and important real estate for your company. So appreciate everybody's participation, and we'll keep the polls open here for just a little bit longer and make sure that everybody has ample time to give your input. Okay, let me go ahead and close the poll, and let me share the results. So really, most of the answers came down on this one, which is it does an adequate job presenting your solutions and services. That's 60%. 30% of you stated it educates your prospects with your value propositions, and 10% stated that it guides them through the steps in their evaluation. So that's good input. And we'll be referring back to these results later as we go through today's webinar. So what I introduced to you today is 6 decisive steps to accelerate sales performance that you have at your company. The first one is creating what we call a sales lead engine. So creating the quality and quantity of sales leads that are required to actually achieve your revenue growth goals. The second is something you may not have heard of before. It's an innovation here at On Demand Advisors, and that is a sales-driven website. So we talk often about that. We think that your website is very, very important, and it should do much more heavy lifting today than it does for you. The third is a sales playbook. What is the playbook that you have? Most companies I talk to, and I've talked to hundreds of companies, most of them don't have a sales playbook. We're going to introduce another innovation here called the Sales Performance Center. And how does that get utilized by the sales team to actually help convert prospects into opportunities? The fifth area is sales conversion offers. And the final area is really what's your strategy to win and overcome obstacles. So we're going to cover each of those in detail today. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and start off with #1. Just an overview. Everybody that is joining us today on the webinar is going to receive a copy of what we call the Revenue Acceleration Map. What Craig and I realized a number of years ago as we were scaling private and both public companies is that most of us as executives, most of you, really understand how to bring a new service or product to market. What we didn't have is we didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a revenue acceleration playbook that we could refer to that had a set of best practices that we could apply to our company. And what this would do is give us 3 things. One, predictable revenue. So all of us want predictability. And if you're a public company, it's even more important than before because you want to have predictable revenue for the prognostication that you're giving to the market each quarter, the forecast that you're giving. You really want to have visibility of what's happening in the next several quarters. The second reason for having revenue acceleration map and best practices is really to say, how do we eliminate a lot of the experimentation that happens today? Because all executives I talk to experiment with a lot of areas. And some of these areas we're talking about today are in the area of sales. So how do you eliminate that expensive experimentation? And then how do you apply this in the shortest, most rigorous way for your company? So you'll receive a copy of this revenue acceleration map. This map is the codification, it's the visualization of revenue growth best practices. And you can see that there are different colors here, different areas. In the purple is what we call the strategic areas of revenue growth. In the red is marketing. In the yellow is sales. And in the gray here at number 7 is revenue growth vectors. So today, for today's webinar, we're going to spend most of our time right here in sales because this is about sales peak performance, sales optimization. But of course, in other webinars, like the one we have coming up in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about this one, which is buyer intelligence. Because if you're in sales today, you really want to understand what's in the head of your buyer. You really want to understand what's important to them. You really want to understand what offers or options you can offer them are meaningful from their perspective. So if you're like me, I love to be in the head of 100 decision makers in my target audience and really understand their perspective before I even engage with them. So that's something we'll be talking about in 2 weeks. So we start with the revenue growth goals, and we have all these. And so today it's about over here in terms of the sales funnel and saying, I've got this sales team. Let's say it's 10 people that are involved in sales today at your company. How do I make them more efficient? How do I make them more productive? How do I actually help them become an A player? So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is building a sales lead engine for your company. And I haven't met a company, quite frankly, in the hundreds and hundreds of companies that we've engaged, I haven't met one company that doesn't have a challenge in this area. So part of it is, how do you put in that engine? How do you optimize it? And we're going to talk about 2 aspects of doing that. The first one is getting the quality, and the second is getting the quantity. So what we figured out a number of years ago is the best way to really get your offers correct, your messaging correct, your positioning correct, is through buyer intelligence. Buyer intelligence is really probably one of the most important takeaways from today's webinar. It's the way you're going to create the quality of leads that you're looking for. So if you do a buyer intelligence survey, as we've done hundreds of these, you're going to find out of the pains that you think you solve today, how important are those to your decision makers? Of the value propositions that you offer, how important are those on a scale of 1 to 10 to your decision makers? This gives you a great opportunity to ask lots of questions about how do they want to buy from you, what functionality or services are important to them. If they were looking for your type of solution, who do they trust? Where would they go? How would they go about doing that? That's really meaningful if you're thinking about implementing and investing money in certain areas, because you only want to invest where your buyer is going to be. And influencers, who's going to help influence their decision, both internally and externally to the company as far as your solution. This is magnificent information for you to have, because once you get this information, it changes every aspect of how you engage with your marketplace and your target audiences going forward. So I guess to overemphasize that, I don't want to do that, but I do want to think it's very important. Most of us have really great sales content or sales specific content about our products, services that we offer. What we need instead is buyer content that our buyers are craving for. So once you do a survey through these different areas, it allows you to create your messaging hierarchy and the information based upon the prioritization of your target audience. which then enables you to create the offers that they're going to want to see from you. So it's really wonderful, pragmatic approach to thinking about how you're going to message and position your company going forward, and do it without experimentation. Now that's really about the quality. The quantity of leads really comes down to implementing your reach strategy. So for instance, one of the things that we do today is we're a partner with ZoomInfo, which is a public company. And they're a provider of one of the most extensive databases in the marketplace today. But what's great about that is we work with our customers and their clients and help them look at their reach strategy. Your reach may be to 500,000 people worldwide that could consume and use your solution today. So how do you get to those folks? Well, it's important to have a reach strategy in place. And so that every month you're reaching more and more people in your target audience. Because at this stage, you don't know which 5% are going to buy your solution this year. So reach is very important. Selecting the right campaigns that comes from the buyer intelligence approach that we talked about earlier is important too. So does your audience want to have ebooks or infographics that are visually going to help them understand where you're coming from? Are they looking for an optimized view of what the new solution is going to be for their business that you can provide in an infographic or thought leadership presentation? Are they thinking that maybe what they want to get together with you on a webinar like today's webinar? Is that the right venue? So having the right venues and the right campaigns is really important. So once you get that, you can start executing your plan and moving forward. So selecting the right campaigns is important. This is just a handful of some of the ones that we actually help our clients implement and optimize around. So whether that's email campaigns to send out offers and ebooks and webinar invitations or whatever this is important to you, we're going to talk about that. But there's a lot of campaigns here and a lot more that we don't even have on this sheet that you can look at. The key is to choose the right campaigns that are appropriate for your audience. When you do that, this is what happens with your lead volume. It consistently grows and you get consistent results. This is very important because if you don't do this every week, every month, what you end up doing is chasing the same leads over and over again. So it's important to have new leads. It's important to score and grade those leads through your system. And it's important to have visibility to the lead and revenue creation process. So that's number one. And that's something everybody needs. Everybody needs to feed your salespeople, because if you don't feed your salespeople with the quantity and quality of leads that they need, they're going to spend their time on working on opportunities that are not qualified. So it's not unusual for us to talk to a client and they talk about the longest sales cycle that they've ever had, which is like 3 years. And the reason why that typically happens is because that opportunity was never qualified. They were treating it as a sales opportunity because they needed to. They needed to do that since they didn't have anything else to work on. So the key here is to have enough quality sales opportunities for your sales organization to feed them so they can be perfect at what they do, which is closing business. So that's number one. We'd like to introduce something called the sales-driven website with you for today. When you deploy a sales-driven website, think about taking your best salesperson and enabling that person to be on the website. When you deploy this is going to increase the velocity that you have today with your sales organization, because all of the upfront engagement, education, and preference setting is going to be done through your website. This is extremely important today. And another key takeaway is to migrate from an informational website to a sales-driven website. It is, I believe, your most valuable piece of real estate that you have in your company today. Because when somebody hears about your company, it's where they're going to go. Almost all the websites I see today for B2B companies are informational. They're great websites. They may look great, but they don't progress the buyer's journey. They don't take you through the buyer's journey. So a sales-driven website should educate, it should guide through the buyer's journey, every visitor, and most importantly, it should convert visitors into prospects for you. One of our customers is Technical Toolboxes, and we'll be talking about them. They provide engineering performance management solutions to a number of industries with a main focus on the oil and gas or energy industries. And so what we did is we actually created for them, because we've got the complete skill set and team to do this, a sales-driven website. We migrated them from an informational website to a sales-driven website. So what I'm going to do as we go through today's webinar, I'm going to show you real-time examples of what this looks like. Now this is the website for Technical Toolboxes that you can go to at any time. So first of all, look at the branding, look at the motion, look at the action that we have on this website. It's engaging. It gives you a sense for what they do. Now, I can either select a solution here, or I could go down here and say, this is really good, I love this, but I'm not really sure if I want to select a solution. Let's say I want to select by role. So what we want to do is we want to give you the opportunity to come in here and say, let's go ahead and select by role instead. And so I could be coming in here, and they provide their solutions to lots of different individuals. So let's say I'm a corrosion engineer, or let's say I'm an integrity management engineer, or let's say I'm an operations engineer. I'm going to be able to come in here and self-select. And what this is going to give me is this is going to give me my journey, my personalized journey for me as a corrosion engineer that you're going to take me through. This is just really powerful, because now you're speaking to me. Now you're engaging me. So what are my challenges that I have? Well, I've got quite a few challenges as a corrosion engineer, and I'd love to go through those. And now that you've gone through the challenges, take me through the solutions that you offer me. I'd love to understand it from a corrosion engineer perspective. And you know what? There are always frequently asked challenges or questions that I have. So why don't we just proactively answer those questions for you? And what I really like to ascertain is, who are your clients that are like me? Help me understand who else is using solutions in the corrosion engineering space. And then as we move forward to the next step, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could request a demonstration, or I could see a customer case study right here of another company in my space, or I could get a buyer's guide. And I'm going to walk you through an example of a buyer's guide, which is one of the most important things that you can provide to a prospect, which is help them think through how to buy, how to think about their criteria, and what's the process they should be looking at. So in many cases, your buyer may not know how to buy. Now, if this is a ERP solution that you're selling, and it's the fourth one that they've implemented, they probably have a sense about how to go about doing that. But if you're providing a breakthrough solution, something new, something innovative, then they probably don't know how to do this. So anyway, this is an example of what we call a sales-driven website. And I hope this is helpful in terms of giving you a real-time perspective of what we're talking about. Another part of what we do for websites, and this is an optional part, is what we call accelerated contracting. So the problem that many companies have is that the contract review, the negotiations and approval can be very lengthy, especially if you're selling to the enterprise. So you've got a lot of documents out there that you provide to a prospect. If you're a services company, it may be a services agreement. If you're a software or a product company, it may be a software or subscription agreement. You've got privacy information. You may have a service level agreement. So this is one of the most important things that can bottleneck many of your sales that you have today. So we created something called accelerated contracting. And so what we do with our clients is we work with them in conjunction with the sales-driven website to really be in a position where we develop the best T's and C's, terms and conditions, for the company. We help them get those posted to their website, and we have the conversion to an order form with the acceptance of the T's and C's. So it provides two really valuable value propositions to you as a company. Number one is it eliminates 90% of the negotiations that happens out there today. 10% of your clients may still want you to negotiate some changes to your terms and conditions, but 90% will accept them. So this is really a way to rapidly accelerate your sales process. The second thing that you get as a benefit is that when you have to change your terms and conditions, you don't have to go back to every client and ask them to replace the existing terms and conditions that they have with new ones. Most clients don't want to do that, quite frankly. So you can do this from one place as you update your terms and conditions as you go through time. And all of us change as time changes, we change. Our business model changes. So now I want to talk about two additional ways that you can accelerate sales performance. The third way is what we call the sales playbook. So the playbook is and should be what you provide to everybody that comes aboard that's part of your sales organization, sales team. That could be for new sales executives. That could be for business development or sales development representatives. It could be for sales support resources. The reason you want a sales playbook is because you want consistency across your sales team. And so developing a sales playbook is very important if you're going to have consistent engagement. Another one of our clients is a global social media management services company. So one of the questions you may have today is, I'm a services organization. Does this apply to services organizations too? Well, ICUC is strictly a services organization. They're a large global social media management services company, and they work with the Fortune 1500 companies like a Starbucks and so forth. And so what we worked with them on is creating a playbook for their organization. And this is the table of contents for that playbook that we created. So since they provide their social media management services organizations to chief marketing officers at large companies, we helped everybody that came aboard really understand what are the challenges that those decision makers have. We helped them understand how that need is met by their solutions and what type of customers are available by industry so they can reference those customers as they engage. We walked through the sales process from lead to close. So there was a well understood process. We talked about specifically competitors and created battle cards, as Gardner calls them, in terms of how you could win against each of those competitors. And we provided them with detailed scripts to engage with prospects and buyers along the buyer's journey. We also then created the proper handoff. Once somebody signed up as a customer, how would that be engaged from the services and client services organization that they have today? So the sales playbook really is just exactly that. It's the playbook on how to do things, how to get the job done and done well. Now, I'd like to introduce the fourth area that you can use to accelerate sales performance for your company. And that's what we call sales conversion offers. So 90% of the marketing leads, let's say somebody comes to a webinar that you're putting on, may not be sales ready. That's typical of most B2B companies. So instead, what you need is you need the proper offers, the proper engagement with them to do this, to move forward, to get educated, to become a sales opportunity for your company. So what we've done is we've created a number of different lead conversion offers and a number of sales conversion offers or sales tools for the organization. And this is just a list of some of the ones that we provide. But the key here is, how do you impact your buyer and help them move to the next step? What I'd like to do today is just cover one of those. We call it the buyer's guide. Now, this may be new to those of you in the audience today, but what's the purpose of a buyer's guide? Well, it's really to help your buyer understand how they should evaluate and buy your solution. It will help shorten your sales cycle. It also will help prominently highlight your differentiators, your best practices that you offer with your solution. And it helps align the buying process with the selling process. The challenge for a lot of sales teams today is they know how to sell to a target audience. The problem, though, is the buyer doesn't know what to expect. So having alignment between the buyer and the seller is really important. And that's really the objective. Another one of our clients is Integrity. Integrity is a global company that provides asset integrity management solutions to companies in the oil and gas industry, chemical industry, and other asset-intensive industries. And so we worked with them and created the buyer's guide. And what I'd like to do is show you an example of what that looks like. So this is a buyer's guide that we created for their target audience. As you can see from the table of contents here, we talked about what is the asset integrity management solution, how do you evaluate these solutions, what's the cost-benefit analysis that's important to you, and even getting into how would you think about going through your purchase process. We provided an evaluation checklist, and we talked about other ways to get started. So what you see here is a tremendous amount of helpful information for you as a buyer to really think about how to look at this, what some of the key criteria should be if you're looking at an asset integrity management system, such as risk-based inspections that is integral to these solutions, or process safety, or asset performance. So these are not only differentiators from integrity, but they're also important milestones for their buyer. Then we talked about how to look at the cost and the ROI for this solution in this buyer's guide. And then we talked about what would be the optimal purchase process that you should go through to make sure that you're thorough in achieving your goals in this. And then finally, we provide an evaluation checklist that you can use as a buyer to go through this process. And then other ways to get started. So what you can see on this buyer's guide, it's a tremendous amount of wonderful information for them to really engage with their buyer and provide that buyer with the guide to get started on that journey of going through this evaluation. Let's talk about the fifth area where you can really move the needle for your sales team and help them be productive. This is another innovation that we created at On Demand Advisors. We call it the Sales Performance Center. And so one of the things that we found, and this is the national stat, not ours, is about 2/3 of your sales executive's time is not spent selling, meaning face-to-face selling to clients and prospects. It's about building presentations, doing research, locating what they need, and so forth. So wouldn't it be great if we could help free up a lot of that time and provide the right information that needs to be used at the fingertips of every sales executive that you have? So what they need is they need one source for all their sales tools, all their presentations, contracts, recorded webinars, and engagement vehicles. The other reason they need that one source is because when they're following up with leads that have been created by your marketing organization or by us helping your marketing organization get those leads, it's about lead development. It's not about lead qualification. That will come. It's about lead development. How do you work with the champion or buyer to bring them along in the process? So what we're going to do is show you this Sales Performance Center that we have for one of our clients, Technical Toolboxes. And so when I come to this, notice all these wonderful tools that I have available to me that have been created as we work together with your organization. These tools could be ebooks, they could be infographics, they could be recorded webinars, they could be price books, presentations, and so forth. And so over here, as a sales executive now, I can look at what do I need if I'm coming in for sales training? What do I need if I'm coming in here to look at what's available to support my sales cycle? What are the solutions that I have today? And how do I look at just the right information for API? So if I'm selling one solution, which is API, I want to see exactly what I have here. So if I have a webinar that I just did last week on API to our target audience, I want to talk about how we provide the complementary solutions to that buyer or to that person I'm talking to. Now, let's say I'm at this stage here of qualification. What I just want to see is what do I need to move somebody through this qualification process as the next step in the sales cycle. So again, this is very important. If I'm looking at target individuals in my audience here, I may say, well, what I really want to do is I just want to look at what do we have for a corrosion engineer, because that's who I'm going to be talking to. So now I'm looking at this information here. So if I'm talking to a corrosion engineer, I'm saying, I'm going to pull this information up here, and I'm going to give them a buyer's guide specifically that's related to what they need. I can either download the information here, or I can share the link with a prospective buyer, and they can come here and get the information that they need. So it's very powerful in terms of this. I can also look at different types of guides or types of information that we have available to them, and I can tag this lots of different ways. I may decide to tag this information based upon industry. So this is an example of a sales performance center. One of the national stats that you'll see in the B2B space is that 90% of what's created in marketing is not used by sales. And the reason it isn't is because it's not created, number one, as a sales tool, and number two, it's not provided in a meaningful way for the sales executive to use it in their sales process. So the Sales Performance Center is your ability to go ahead and do that, to use the right tools at the right stage of the sales process, and really to provide that as an enabler for your executives. In our Sales Performance Center, by the way, not only do we offer that view, which is we just went through the different selections, but you can also see what's available by solution. So if I'm selling Pipeline Toolbox, PLTV, at Technical Toolboxes, I can see here that I have an overview, I have a buyer's guide, I have an ROI guide, I have a success story, I have a recorded webinar, and I have a companion webinar ebook available to me. That's really important because it gives me the arsenal of tools that I need to move forward with the buyer through the buying process. So really equipping them for success is a key takeaway from today's webinar. So I've covered 5 areas today. Let's talk about number 6. Number 6 is having a strategy to win and overcome obstacles. And so one of the things I'll talk about, for instance, we do with, and that I do with the sales team at Technical Toolboxes, is I sit down with them every week and I strategize with them on the top opportunities. I talk about the top opportunities and we go through that together. We also have them present. So every sales executive gets to present a solution every week to the team. You know, when you do that, you rehearse, you practice, and you perfect. And it's amazing how good their sales executives are at presenting their solutions, because over the course of a year, everybody's had an opportunity to do that. Everybody's got an opportunity to get critiqued and improve. What I found working with thousands and thousands of salespeople myself and building sales teams as I came into my role as a CEO is that salespeople are very good at telling you that they know something. But unless you inspect that and understand how they can actually execute the sales cycle, you really don't know for sure if they're able to do that. So it's about giving them the opportunity to do that. Another really strategic thing that you can do with your sales organization is get them to stop providing one option or one buying option to their prospect, but instead buy 3. So for instance, what we found is when you provide, let's say, a renewal, let's say you have a client that is on a 3-year renewal, and you sit down with them and you say, okay, we're going to provide them with a new proposal for the next 3 years. If you provide them with one proposal, they're going to pick at it and try to negotiate with you. If you provide 3 meaningful options, though, they're going to spend their time from a behavioral perspective thinking about which of the 3 options is the best for me. So this is really another way that we've been able to help change the negotiating process, and also to have the client focus in on what option is best, as opposed to let's try to negotiate to the floor. 3 more areas I'd like to talk about to help your sales team in terms of peak performance is leverage competitive battle cards. So we have a person on our team, for instance, that has done this at SAP, done this at Oracle, and Gartner talks about battle cards. So if you're in a competitive space, one of the best things you could do with your sales team is provide them with competitive battle cards so that your SWOT and everybody may know what the SWOT is, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, is going to be your competitor's SWOT. And so we create these battle cards to do that. Operating with clear accountability is also another great thing for your sales team. So your marketing team may be responsible for creating the right leads, marketing qualified leads. Then you have SDRs or BDRs that are responsible for lead qualification and lead development. Your sales executive is responsible for moving the ball forward in terms of the sales cycle, working with your associated management team and team. And then your service team is accountable for having a proper handoff and engagement to implement that service or solution with your client. So we're just really excited about this in terms of today, talking about 6 areas that you can really focus on, 6 steps you can take to accelerate and engage your sales team for peak performance this year. So just to recap, we talked about building a sales lead engine. And by the way, we do this for our clients. We help them do it. We help them implement these best practices. So we're not just an advisory company come in and give advice. We actually help you do it. If you don't have the people to do it, we do it for you. And so that's just really an important distinction in terms of when we build this company as a revenue growth agency, we realize we work with all size companies, large and small. Some of you have teams that are looking for best practices. Some of you don't have teams. Maybe you don't even have a marketing department. So we go in and do all that for you. So these are 6 areas we talked about. The lead engine is really important. A sales-driven website to drive the buyer through the buying process. A sales playbook and sales performance center and sales conversions to really equip your team with the tools that they need to be successful, and a strategy to win. So let's bring all this together into one example with technical toolboxes as we've worked with them or worked with their team. So a couple of weeks ago, we helped them execute a new webinar on AC mitigation. What's one of their solutions that they offer? We began with the process of creating the webinar, working to select the speaker, and then really create the presentation with that speaker. We also created what we call a companion ebook so that we could provide that ebook in conjunction with the webinar as really taking it to the next step. From there, we worked with them to create the campaigns and the emails that get sent out to their target audience and executed through their marketing automation system. And then creating the landing page and getting those webinars, getting those registered. So for this webinar that we helped to execute, they had 550 webinar registrations for the webinar, a lot of registrations, which is great. And then about 57% of the people showed up for the webinar. And then what we did is we worked with their sales team to actually create the lead qualification script. So what do you do when you're going to follow up on these leads? Is it email? Is it calling campaigns? What would you say to move the ball forward? So we helped them deploy a winning strategy for each of these prospects that came to the webinar or registered for the webinar. And then the 8th step was really giving them access to the sales performance center that we created for them so that they could look at the additional offers that were for AC mitigation and provide those in addition, like a buyer's guide, a customer success story, and other tools like an infographic. Provide these tools to the buyer to actually help them in the process. The whole objective here was to convert market qualified leads into sales qualified leads and take it through the sales process to close that business. So anyway, that's how we put all this together, is everybody knows what they need to do to execute the sales process. Everybody knows what tools are available to be successful, and their branding and positioning and buyer's journey on the website really helped initiate all that. So what I'd like to do right now is have another poll and again ask your input from today's webinar, your takeaways here. So based upon what we talked about, if you would be kind enough to participate in one more poll here, we'd appreciate that. What do you see you need most when you think about what we discussed? Do you need more leads? Number one. Do you need a sales-driven website like we showed you with technical toolboxes? Do you need a sales performance center? one-stop shopping, if you will? Do you need better sales conversion offers to help move your buyer through the different steps in the buyer's process? Or do you need a better strategy to win and overcome obstacles than you have today? So go ahead and participate, and we'll share the aggregate findings of today's participants on today's webinar as we move forward. And we'll also be talking about next steps and opening up the conversation as far as questions that you have. So thank you everybody for participating. I'm going to go ahead and if you're good with this, I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results. So the key takeaways, 50% of you stated that the most important takeaway is migrating and transforming your company to a sales-driven website. So that's fantastic. 33% of you stated it's having the right strategy to win and overcoming obstacles. And then we've got some other folks talking about building a sales lead engine and also building better sales conversion offers. So thank you for that. Thank you for participating. So what we'd like to do at this time is let's just open this up for Q&A. So let's think about your question that you have, and let's go ahead and field those questions. We love your questions. All questions are important. So please go ahead and post your questions right now. And I'll start off with some questions right off the bat here. So here's a question from Scott. Scott had a question that says, do I have to do everything at once, or can I get started with one area? That's a great question, Scott. I would tell you that you can start anywhere. So I just talked about 6 areas. Let's start where is the area that offers the greatest opportunity for you in terms of sales improvement, sales productivity, and that's a great place to start. So whether that's building a lead generation engine or transforming your website from what it is today to be a sales-driven website, we could start there. So that's what I would suggest, is start where you have the greatest need. This one is from Danielle, and Danielle asks, she says, our sales cycles are too long. How do I shorten them? A great question, because most people that we talk to, their sales cycles are too long. So a couple things I would talk from today's webinar that or share with you. One is the sales-driven website is obviously an area you can use to accelerate your sales cycles. Another thing that most people don't think about is creating the volume of opportunities that you have, because if you create enough sales opportunities, it gives your sales team to be more selective on which ones they're going to work on. So they work on the ones that are highly qualified first, and those are the ones that get the attention. Another thing that we talked about is accelerated contracting. So don't allow your enterprise deals to get stuck in the ether, and that's another way to do that. And then finally, what I'd like to share with you, Danielle, is maybe what you should think about doing is putting together what we call a joint evaluation plan with your champion. A lot of salespeople know where they want to take somebody through the sales steps in the sales cycle, but a lot of times the champion doesn't know what steps they're going to go through to complete their evaluation and purchase of your solution. So having a plan letter is what we call it, that is shared with your buyer is a great way to accelerate the process and have certainty what the process is. So that's a great question. Okay, let's look at some other questions here that we have. And thank you. By the way, if we don't get to all your questions today, and we do have a lot of questions, then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that I or somebody on our team, like Craig, follows up with you and will answer your questions in detail. So all questions are important. Okay, here's the next question. The question is, where does the responsibility for creating all content lie? With marketing or with sales? And how do you get the right subject matter experts to create the right content? That's a great question. So I love that question. My feeling is that marketing should be responsible for creating the content and creating the sales tools that you need. The way to do that, though, is to start with sales and start understanding what the sales need, and then ensure that marketing creates the right content. If you don't have a marketing department, then we'll help do that. If you do have a marketing department, we'll complement that. We'll complement them to do that. You know, we talked about ICUC, significant company with a marketing organization, and their chief marketing officer came to our webinar that we have today and said, hey guys, we're creating about 40, 50 leads per month. I need 250, 300 leads per month. Can you help me do that? Complement what we're doing. And that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly what we do with them. So it's really important to have that type of collaboration that happens. On the subject matter experts. So when we work with a company, you typically have your internal subject matter experts. If you don't have those subject matter experts, then we also work with external subject matter experts. So for instance, one of our clients has created a solution that helps their clients with mobility management. It's a mobile solution. They don't have a strong SME, subject matter expert, inside the company. So what we're doing is we're working with external audiences that are really SMEs in mobility to bring those subject matter experts into the process with them. So think about this. One of the things that we're going to do with them is we're going to have a person speak about mobility in their industry, and we're bringing that person to bear. The second step is to show the solution around mobility, and the third is to talk about their customers and ROI that those customers are receiving from that mobility solution. So it's a great way to offer something that's really going to be huge for their sales organization. Okay, here's another question. It says, the sales-driven website is fantastic, but will be completely unfamiliar to new visitors. How many visitors find their way to their journey? Well, interesting question. And what we find is that one of the keys is to enable them to opt in based upon how they see themselves. Do they see themselves by role? Do they see themselves by industry? Do they see themselves by looking for a specific solution or function? And so, for instance, one of the CRM companies we're working with that provides a suite, a customer engagement suite, they provide solutions for sales, marketing, business development, and contract management. So in their case, as we're building their sales-driven website, we're going to enable you to opt in by function. For other clients, it's more meaningful to do by industry. So anyway, these are some good ways to think about that. Let's do one more question if we could. This one is from Mark. Mark says, we cannot sell online our solution. Do I still use a sales-driven website? And the answer is yes. So whether you provide a strategic solution or a transactional solution, the strategic solutions are going to require a sales-driven website to do all the front-end education and engagement. If you're selling transactional solutions, though, we can complete everything on the sales website. So we can actually complete the purchase, the contracting, the order form on the website. So the sales-driven website is your opportunity to accelerate the sales process, regardless of whether you sell an enterprise or a transactional solution or service. So anyway, thank you very much for your questions in that area. Let's talk about some next steps, and that might be meaningful for you and your process today. We talked a little bit about who we are as a revenue acceleration agency and that we serve all size companies. But think about, these are different guides that we've created. This is a revenue acceleration best practices set of guides that are available to you today. If you're in marketing, these are some guides that we have specifically for you. And we'd like you to be able to partake in those guides and really think about how you're going to move the needle in marketing. For our conversation today, we talked about a number of things. We talked about a sales playbook. We talked about a sales performance center. We talked about a sales-driven website. And we didn't talk about your infrastructure, but how to implement your CRM solution and executive dashboards for your company. And then if you work with partners, you have a partner sales channel, for instance, at Intact, half of our revenue came in through our partner channel. Then we help many companies in terms of their partner scorecard and implement a partner revenue acceleration program that really drives revenue. So next webinar we're going to have in 2 weeks on the 25th is going to be around buyer intelligence. And I hope that everybody here on today's webinar will join us for that webinar. It's going to be most meaningful for you as you're thinking about really getting in the head of your decision makers, If you're thinking about launching a new service or a new solution, it would be great to have buyer intelligence about that. Or if you're thinking about getting into a new market, a new area, or a new industry, it's great to do this before you invest heavily in marketing and sales programs into that new area. So here's contact information for me, Art Drakowski at On Demand Advisors. For Craig, Remy, it's Remy at On Demand Advisors. You're welcome to visit our website if you'd like to register for our webinar in 2 weeks, or give us a call and have a chat. We'd love to discuss what your needs or questions are on an ongoing basis. So for myself, for Craig, and for our entire On Demand Advisors team, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar. We really appreciate your attendance, your participation, and we hope that you'll take away these 6 decisive steps that will help really move the needle for you and for your organization in terms of sales acceleration, sales performance that you're looking for this year in 2021. Thank you, everyone.